Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar. Brandon, are you optimistic that this rest is ultimately a good thing, and whoever they play, Clippers or Nuggets, that there's not going to be signs of rust that's going to impact their Game 1 performance?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion rest is better than rust. I guess I'll say this: the rest outweighs the rust because I don't think the Thunder are going to forget how to play basketball. They're not going to forget how to shoot. They're still in the gym. They're still practicing. They're still putting shots up. Obviously, it's not the same as the game reps, but ultimately, any sort of little nicks, injuries, bruises they have, they get more rest. They'll come in refreshed, and I think if anything, they'll be ready to play by the time the ball tips off because they're just sitting here waiting. And, when I play pickup ball, and if I go a week without playing, like I'm ready to go. I just want to play. I think Thunder will be ready and good to go.
Well, the last time we spoke on the podcast, the Thunder had just completed the first two games of the series, looked miles ahead of the Grizzlies, and there was probably no hope for the Grizzlies if you were looking at those first two games. Now, let's go to the last two games of the series. So the Thunder ended up sweeping the Grizzlies, but that game 3, they fell behind by as many as 29 points in the first half. The Grizzlies looked energized by their home crowd, and maybe, according to Jaw, they had the Thunder figured out. Stop at halftime, all right, and ignore the Jaw injury. How do you think the series would have played out had that injury not occurred?
Yeah, look, I get why Jaw said that. You're a superstar in the NBA. You're going to want to say that. But I think that probably the Thunder still come back. If Jaw is healthy, they probably don't end up getting the win. I think that, he would make enough of a difference where the Grizzlies hold on. I imagine the Thunder, they just don't quit. They fight. The effort, the energy would have been there second half. So I think they make it close, but the Grizzlies probably win. But I still think that the Thunder win game 4. Look, even if Jaw's playing, Scottie Pippen Jr. was their best player in game 4. He's not going to get, that same game if Jaw's in there because he's going to be more ball dominant. And I think the Thunder will be more motivated if Jaw's there. It just changes everything if Jaw's in there. And ultimately, I think the Thunder are the better team. And I think that they go back 3-1 if Jaw doesn't get hurt. That would be my guess.
Well, maybe I'll take a little bit of the other side. Obviously, I think I'm going to agree that if Jaw had played that second half, they're probably taking game 3 and it's a 2-1 series. If it's a 2-1 series and they win by double digits, even if the Thunder come back, it probably ends up being a double-digit win. There's a lot that the Grizzlies can take away from game 3. And then as we go to game 4, the defense for the Thunder that was so good in game 1 just wasn't as good in game 4. Like the defensive rating was much lower. They had like a 75 defensive rating in game 1, and I think it was 110 defensive rating in game 4. So maybe in some respects, the Grizzlies had sort of figured out a way to attack the Thunder defense. Or do you think the Thunder really just was like, we got this, we don't have to try?
Yeah, I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I do think that if Jaw was playing and had the Grizzlies won game 3, like defense is so much about like effort. And I just think that if the Thunder had lost game 3, we see a much more locked in, focused, and motivated team in game 4, especially if Jaw is healthy. So yeah, that's my biggest thing is like the circumstances would be completely different. So the game is completely different. And I just ultimately trust the fact that the Thunder are just a better team. And I would just have a hard time seeing it going back 2-2 when the Thunder are just that much better than the Grizzlies and have beat them 13 times in a row, even if the last 2 were with Jaw out.
Well, and I'm glad it didn't go back 2-2. I imagine that the feelings among Thunder fans wouldn't be very positive with a 2-2 series against the number 8 seed, even though among 8 seeds, the Grizzlies are a better 8 seed than, let's say, what the Cavs went through in facing the hapless Heat. And I would also add that the game 4 closeness of the game was largely impacted by the Thunder's inability to make a shot, shooting 20% from 3. I mean, they were getting good looks, but they couldn't convert a 3.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The 3-point shooting, and it's so funny because we just saw this last night with the Wolves beating the Lakers. The Wolves shot horribly against the Lakers in that game 5 and still pulled out the win. And the Thunder did the same thing in game 4. And again, if Jaw's playing, if Jaw's healthy, like some of those shots are different. It just changes the entire, it's like the butterfly effect. It changes the entire outlook of the game. So maybe some of the shots were different and maybe some of those go down that didn't go down with Jaw out just because the game is just different.
Well, considering the lessons that may have been learned from games 3 and game 4, particularly game 3, where the Grizzlies did come out hot and were stomping on the Thunder in the first half. So what do you think that Daignault and the team are focused on correcting as they look at the round 2 matchups?
Yeah, I do think that like defensive, effort and focus will be a priority because that's something that they can control. I think that they were happy with the shots that they got and the execution on the offensive end. And, obviously dependent on who the matchup is, whether it's the Clippers or Nuggets, those two series just look completely different because the Clippers are such a better defensive team than the Nuggets are. So, what you're going to accomplish offensively is going to be different between the two. Like if it's the Clippers, it's more of a slug it out type of series. And if it's the Nuggets, that could be like, a high flying offensive series. The Thunder can play either way. The defense is always going to translate. And so I think, that would be the main focus would be defensive attention to detail going into round 2 because that's something you can control.
Yeah, and it feels like the Thunder can control that to some degree. Again, they weren't playing that well defensively at the beginning of game 3. In that second half, there was urgency on the defensive end. I think they can force 10 turnovers in the second half against Memphis in that game 3. And that's the difference maker for the Thunder. That was a difference maker in game 4 as well, turning the Grizzlies over in a night where they were not shooting very well. And, what do you think about the matchup between the Clippers and the Nuggets? Who do you think the Thunder match up better defensively, especially at their core ability to turn the ball over?
I think it would be the Clippers. With James Harden, you have the ability to turn them over a lot. Not only that, but the Clippers, I think, are the better overall team, by the way, than the Nuggets just slightly. But I think the Nuggets are going to win this series. But the Clippers, their legs, their age, I don't think can keep up with the Thunder in transition, and the youth and speed and athleticism of the Thunder, I think will, in a potential series against the Clippers, that would be a big issue for LA. So I think defensively, you can throw Dort on Harden. That's, he's always been a nemesis to James Harden. You have defenders like Caruso, J-Dub, Cason Wallace that you can throw on Kawhi and Norman Powell. I just think that the Clippers, another pillar of that Clippers team offensively is the Harden to Zubac connection. The Thunder can handle that pretty well with the way that they play. I just really, really like that Clippers matchup. So I personally, if you're a Thunder fan, would be rooting for the Clippers myself. I know most people are going the opposite way and saying the Nuggets. I just think the Nuggets have Jokic. And I think that the supporting cast has become underrated somehow in Denver. So I personally like the Clippers matchup more.
Interesting. I might play the other side. I think that the Clippers are the better team. I think we agree on that. And they present maybe some different matchup challenges for the Thunder, but the variable there is really going to be Kawhi because he's a two-way player. And if Kawhi is playing at his peak ability on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, that's going to probably make a little bit of Shea and the perimeters for the Thunder, their life more difficult on the offensive side of the ball. And then I do think the Nuggets are going to live and die by what Jokic can do. And if you can somehow neutralize Jokic, it's going to be very difficult for the Nuggets to win 4 games. They're going to need 4 great games from their supporting cast. And a lot of that supporting cast is dependent upon what like Christian Brown does or what Russell Westbrook does. That was Westbrook has been an X factor of this series for the Nuggets. And I just don't know if I trust the supporting cast for the Nuggets to overcome being able to shut down their one central player in Jokic.
Yeah, shout out to Russ. The Nuggets might just have one win right now if it wasn't for Russell Westbrook. That's how good he's played. The thing with the Nuggets, they don't have the depth. Like behind their starting 5 and Russell Westbrook, they sort of trust Peyton Watson. So they have like 6.5 guys that they play. But the thing is, they're giving big minutes to all their starters and to Russell Westbrook because they don't trust anyone else, which, you could be advantage Thunder because, they're getting worn down. But then you could also say, well, that, kind of neutralizes the fact that they don't have any depth because they're playing their best players so many minutes. I just ultimately come down to the fact that the Clippers have, I do think they're the better team, and they will present more challenges defensively for the Thunder because they can throw Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. and Kawhi on Shea and Dub. But they have so many one-way players like James Harden, Norman Powell, Bogdanovich, all offense but no defense. And then they have Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., and Ben Simmons, all defense, no offense. I think the Thunder, the way they're constructed, can really take advantage of one-way players in the playoffs. I guess I'm just the upside and ceiling. I think the Thunder are better than both teams, like clearly better than both teams. But if there's one team that I'm like, okay, if they reach their ceiling, if they hit their upside, which one of these teams could I see, upsetting the Thunder if they hit that ceiling? And to me, it's the Nuggets because of Jokic and then what Jamal Murray is capable of. Michael Porter Jr. can get hot. Christian Brown, we've seen Russ be an X factor, like you said. So that's probably why I lean Clippers because of the upside of the Nuggets.
Do you think the Nuggets close it out tonight?
I don't. I think LA wins in LA. I just have a hard time seeing the fact that, the first 4 games were so close and could have gone either way. And really, the Clippers should have been up 3-1, quite honestly. So I have a hard time believing that they lose 4-2 and lose that Game 6 in LA. I think it goes to Game 7 in Denver.
Okay, well, certainly worth talking about that since that's going to be the Thunder's next opponent. But let's go back to the Grizzlies series and let's talk about individual playoff performances. We'll start with Shea, who clearly struggled in the series. He had a fantastic game 4, and I think he was the difference maker in being able to close that game out, especially on a night where the shooting was so poor. He just was able to generate points in a way that few players in the league can do. I know we're all going to agree that we're not worried about Shea, but what do you take away from, his struggles in the first 2 to 3 games of the series?
Yeah, so here's my thing with that. I honestly just think it was Shea missing shots that he normally makes. Like, I don't think it was really anything that the Grizzlies did. I don't think it was a matchup thing. I don't think it was the defense from the Grizzlies. Like, Scottie Pippen Jr., all respect, I think that he, showed out this series, and he was the one bright spot, I thought, for the Grizzlies. But I don't think that he really affected Shea. Shea's got such a size advantage. We just saw, so many of those baseline jumpers, so many of those mid-range jumpers. Shea, we've seen hit 9 times out of 10. They were just going in and out those first few games. Yeah, Zach Edey is big. Yes, Jaren Jackson Jr. is the former Defensive Player of the Year. They have some size, and they did a pretty good job of trying to kind of wall off the paint and the drives. But Shea mostly got the shots that he wanted. He just wasn't making them this series. So that's my thing. I just think it was more so Shea was a bit off than anything that the Grizzlies did.
Well, as we continue to look at some of the individual performances, I'm going to ask you a question and put you on the spot here. Of the players for the Thunder in that first series, who do you think had the best net rating?
I feel like the best overall player was J-Dub. To me, the standouts were J-Dub, Chet, and Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso played less minutes, and he had a huge impact every time he came in, so I will say Alex Caruso.
Oh, it's Cason Wallace.
Nice, Queso.
Surprised me, but then when I thought about it, didn't really surprise me. So the Thunder had a 29.7 plus net rating with a 121.8 offensive rating, which is awesome. And then the team's best defensive rating among players who played all 4 games was 92.1 with Cason on the floor. Caruso was second, J-Dub was third, so those are not surprising. They both had great series. But, I think Cason is a major X factor for the Thunder. We already expected Caruso to get more minutes in the playoffs, and he's kind of shown why they wanted him in the playoffs as opposed to what the Thunder had at his position last year in the playoffs. But, maybe trump up what Cason Wallace did this last series and why you think he might have led the team in net rating.
First of all, this is a guy that Bleach Report is trying to trade away for Giannis. I mean, come on. Shout out to Queso. He played really well. His defense just pops every time he's out there. His on-ball perimeter defense, it's so hard to go one-on-one with him. His hands are so quick. I think that just when he comes in, he's a two-way player, which is why the Thunder were so high on him coming into that draft, because we saw, his rookie year, he shot over 40% from three. But he can also now, in the second year, he kind of took the leap, and we saw it a little bit in the playoffs. He didn't score as much in the playoffs, but he's capable. He will drive it. He will take it to the rim. I just think that his defense, when he comes in, he also, and we saw it in this Grizzlies series, and I think it, is pretty telling with the net rating. He just doesn't make mistakes. He plays his role perfectly. He comes in, he plays lockdown defense. He only takes good shots, whether it's from three or whether it's driving to the rim. He plays mistake-free basketball, which is so impressive when you consider he's one of the youngest players on one of the youngest teams in the NBA.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, his defensive impact is enormous because you look at his scoring stats. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well from either the floor or from three. He only averaged 4 points per game over the series. But the fact that the team still had a 121, almost a 122 offensive rating and a 91.8 defensive rating when he was on the court, that's incredible and is a testament to his defense. So let's talk now about J-Dub, who I would say was the MVP of the Thunder in that first series, although Chet might be a close second. Do you think there was a difference in the way J-Dub was attacking in this series as opposed to maybe what you might have seen in the norm in the regular season?
Yeah, so I agree with you that Dub was the MVP, and I think it's great because he was kind of the biggest question mark for a lot of people coming into the playoffs. Like for the Thunder, could he be the second scorer, reliable threat? And he was so great and so consistent and so efficient, and he stuffed the stat sheet. I think, honestly, to answer your question, J-Dub was just J-Dub. This is what we saw in the regular season. He scored, between 20 and 26 points every game, 5 or 6 rebounds, 5 or 6 assists, a couple of steals, a block a game. That's just what J-Dub did throughout the season, and that's why he's an all-star. That's why he might make third-team All-NBA. I think people are just surprised because he had a rough second-round series against the Mavs last year, so people were kind of doubting it. But this is just what J-Dub did in the regular season. It's just translating now to the playoffs so far this season.
Yeah, and now let's talk about Chet, who probably was the most significant reason the Thunder were able to come back in that game 3. Chet had a great series overall. So is Chet rounding into form? Is he peaking at the right time?
Yes, 100%. Chet was so good. And, obviously, very, very unfortunate injury. But for him to come back and to be playing like this in the playoffs after missing 3 months to a hip fracture, it's just so impressive. He was, his play in the second half of Game 3 in that comeback was just so huge. Three-pointer after three-pointer after three-pointer. He had so many blocks. He completely outplayed Jaren Jackson Jr. this series, which I think was a huge difference maker for the Thunder. Because if you're looking at the cross matchups, and I think we talked about this when we were previewing the series, you would say, okay, SGA is better than Ja, J-Dub is better than Bane, and then, I predicted that Chet would be better than Jaren Jackson Jr., which, if you're the Grizzlies, you're thinking that might be a matchup you can win, but Chet just completely outplayed Jaren Jackson Jr., and if this is the Chet we see the rest of the playoffs, hitting threes at a high clip, blocking shots, deterring shots, altering shots at the rim, bodes very, very well for the Thunder that Chet and Dub both played this well. And Shea, if anything, had an off series because he's going to play better as well. So very good signs that Chet and Dub played so well.
Yeah, and now I want to give it up to Alex Caruso, who had a great series. This is why the Thunder acquired Caruso for these moments, these series, the playoffs, and he showed up for it. He's averaging 21 minutes. He's scoring 7 points, and he's actually one of the better three-point shooters in that series. He shot nearly 39% from three. So Caruso also huge props in enabling the Thunder to take a 4-0 series win.
Yeah, Dub, Chet, and Caruso were the 3 standouts throughout the series. This is exactly why the Thunder went out and traded for Alex Caruso. And it's also why the Thunder were so cautious and careful with Caruso throughout the season. They kept his minutes at 20 minutes per game. Anytime he had any sort of little injury, nick, bruise, bump, they would rest him. He would take a game off because they wanted the 100% diving on the floor, going for every loose ball, doing what he's doing in the playoffs, Alex Caruso, because he is a huge X factor. And this is just what Alex Caruso does. He's a difference maker, a win now player. I think it was a win-win trade. Bulls got a really nice young player in Josh Giddey to help build around, but the Thunder want to win now, and you swap Giddey's defense for Caruso's elite defense, and Giddey's, they would let him shoot for Caruso, like you said, shooting 39% in the first round. And that's just kind of who Caruso is. He's been around a 38 to 40% shooter for the last several years. So I would expect this play from Caruso to continue. He said himself that this time of year, the playoffs correlates with his style of play. He can't do it all the time in the regular season. But in the postseason, this is who he is.
And now I want to talk about the rotations a little bit. So the Thunder were kind of all over the map. There weren't really consistent rotations that were deployed across all four games. And of course, all four games played out very differently. But the Thunder went 10 deep. So 10 players played minutes in all four games. The fewest minutes was by Jay Will, who averaged to 7.3 minutes, but he made an appearance in all four games. You look at some of the other teams, and they're going 7 deeps, basically sometimes only about 6 deep, really, with meaningful minutes. As we move into the second round, and we talked about this the last time, though, do you think that's going to change, or do you think that the Thunder are still going to go mostly 9, 10 deep and then give spot minutes to AJ and Kenrich Williams?
I do think that they'll continue to go 9, 10 deep and maybe still give those spot minutes to AJ and to Kenrich. Obviously, round 2 is going to be more competitive, and I would expect Shea, Dub, and Chet's minutes to go up, Caruso and Dortz maybe as well. So even though I think they'll still go 9 or 10 deep, like the 7, 8, 9, 10 guys, I would guess play fewer minutes, even if they still play. Isaiah Joe is still going to be in this rotation. Cason Wallace, those guys for sure will still be in the rotation. Maybe Aaron Wiggins' minutes, get cut a little bit more. Jay Wills maybe get cut a little bit more. The Thunder love their depth. They're going to use their depth. But I do expect the top players to play more minutes for sure in a more competitive series.
Well, I want to take a moment too and look at the rest of the NBA playoffs. There's a game tonight between on the East between the Knicks and the Pistons, but I'm going to focus more on the Western Conference. So the Rockets easily handled the Warriors last night. Do you think the Rockets can come back from that 3-1 deficit and take the series, or when the Warriors play at home, they're going to close them out?
Yeah, I think the Warriors will close them out in 6. I predicted the Warriors in 6 before the series started, and I think it's setting up perfectly. Look, I think the Rockets have been impressive this series, like to come back and to play that game 5 the way that they did, down 3-1, and to win big. Win so big that you make the Warriors sit their starters in the middle of the third quarter is so impressive, and they have a bright future. They've had a great season, but ultimately the Warriors have the 2 best players in the series, Steph Curry and Jim Butler, and I called him Jim, Jimmy Butler, and they're at home. I have a very, very hard time believing that Curry, Butler, Draymond are going to lose a game 6, a closeout game at home.
And then the Lakers T-Wolves series, the Wolves won the last 3 games to take that series, so the Wolves won it 4-1. Do you think that Shannon Sharpe is to blame for the Lakers losing that series?
OKC, KFC, UFC, Lakers in 5 to Cancun. I think the fact that they didn't have a center, the fact that they didn't have any defense, and that they didn't have any depth are the reasons to blame. And also credit to the Wolves. I think the Wolves are just a better team. And I'm mad at myself because I said before the series that I thought the Wolves were the better overall team. They have more depth, they have more size, they have more defense. But I chickened out and I chose the Lakers to win the series in 7. Should have gone with my gut. I chickened out. But Anthony Edwards was great. Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert. I think that, the narrative, unfortunately, because it's the Lakers and because it's LeBron and Luka, the narrative is that the Lakers, lost. But to me, credit to the Wolves. They're just really good. I think the Wolves were more underrated than anything going into the series. They're a legitimate, finals threat, I think. I think if I were to predict right now, I've got Thunder and Wolves in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. And yeah, going into that Lakers-Wolves series, I think most of the experts and the betting lines were favoring the Lakers to win that series. Theoretically, the Lakers had more of that top-end talent when they've got LeBron and Luka, but Minnesota was just a better team overall, and the inside presence that the Wolves had, the Lakers had no answer for. And I think for that same reason, the Wolves match up really well against either Houston or the Warriors. So they probably are the favorite to advance out of that series.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's ultimately going to be the Warriors and the Wolves. Look, the Warriors have, like we talked about, Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler. They just don't have the depth. They've got some really nice role players, but they're so inconsistent. The Wolves are deep. The Wolves are big, and the Wolves are talented. And at this point, you can argue whether Anthony Edwards or Steph Curry is the better player at this point in their careers. But the Wolves might have the best overall player in that series in Anthony Edwards. So you have maybe the best player, and you have home court, and you have more depth and more size. And I think size, we even saw it with the Warriors playing game against the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies almost won that because the Warriors had real issues with their size. So yeah, I would favor the Wolves in that series for sure.
All right, moving on to the other thing that the Thunder Nation is really waiting on, and is that's the announcement of the NBA MVP award. Brandon, when is that going to happen?
There has been no announcement. It's TBD still. And, I've been refreshing my email and social media and all that stuff, waiting for some sort of announcement as far as a date goes. And there hasn't been. Maybe they're waiting to see if it's Nuggets Thunder in the second round and scheduling it, knowing it's going to be one of those guys for when the Thunder and Nuggets are actually playing. Maybe that's a possibility. So I am curious myself, but it should be soon. And I think that OKC fans are going to be really, really happy when the announcement comes.
Well, what do you think about for the Nuggets fans or for the Nuggets in general? Let's say they do advance, the Nuggets advance, and it's announced before game one of that series. Is that going to give the Nuggets extra motivation to sort of like in the national championship game between OU and Florida State, and Torrance Marshall said we're going to get that Heisman back?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that reference. Yeah, one of my favorite OU football moments. Unfortunately, I do think that does provide extra motivation for the Nuggets because you kind of rally around your guys. So unfortunately, I do think that would give Denver some extra motivation going into the series. Ultimately, will that make a difference? Probably not. Maybe for that one game for the first quarter or whatever, they came out stronger or whatever. But ultimately, I think the talent and the best team wins out, and it won't make that much of a difference. But for sure, they'll be more motivated.
Well, we do have a lot to look forward to. There will be playoff games again in Oklahoma City. I know it seems like it's been forever. It has been forever. The playoff games have been hit or miss. There have been some really good games. There have been some big stinkers, especially in that Cavs series. But game one of the Western Conference semis for the Thunder will start either May 5th if Rockets Warriors goes 7, but May 6th if Rockets Warriors goes 6. Scheduling quirk, I guess.
Yeah, just a weird scheduling quirk, but yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So we may have to have some kind of emergency pod before the series so that we can preview Nuggets Thunder or Clippers Thunder in advance of that series, but playoff basketball is right around the corner for that second round. Brandon, anything you want to add about the Grizzlies series, the overall playoffs at large? Anything you think we missed?
No, I think you did a great job covering it. I'm really, really looking forward to finishing out this Clippers-Nuggets series and seeing who the second round opponent is. I think if anything, you're rooting for whether you think the Thunder match up better with the Nuggets or the Clippers. You want to see the series go 7. Get those guys, whether it's Kawhi and Harden or whether it's Jokic and Westbrook or whatever, get those guys over 30 as worn out as possible before round 2.
I agree. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and he's Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back in your feed soon.